yeah, I'm just going to write, we're going to wrap up the welfare stuff right now. What did Adam Smith propose in The Wealth of Nations? What was the general gist of what he stated in The Wealth of Nations? Visible hand. What's that, John?
People acting on their self-interest will create a situation where everyone's better off.
Okay, good. So by people serving their own self-interest, the public interest will best be served, right? So we kind of get this, which is counterintuitive. What was one of the ways that we got that result, or that we get that result in a market economy where greed doesn't completely take over? What's the thing that keeps greed in check, so to speak? Competition. Okay. So those are kind of the concepts that are underlying a lot of this general equilibrium. Early on, economists questioned whether we get that result. Do we really get society's outcomes in the best spot? So that's this general equilibrium stuff kind of develops a model that illustrates how we could get to that point through all of our optimal conditions. And so our big condition here was our production possibilities frontier with cats and popcorn. We had the transformation of goods on the production side. So there's the production possibilities frontier. And this is some sort of social utility indifference curve. Marginal benefit and marginal cost, when they equal each other in a competitive environment, gives us this allocatively efficient solution of popcorn and cats. And how do we know that comes about through trade? We kind of use the Edgeworth box scenario to see that all of these things kind of start to line up. Here in competition, we have producers producing cats and popcorn, and this was with our isoquants. So we get the marginal rates of technical substitution equal to each other. I'm going to leave off some of the abbreviations. You guys should have them from last time. What did we have equal over here? Yes, so the marginal rate of substitution, slope of the indifference curve equal to the marginal rate of transformation. The transformation part was related to all these points along the contract curve in the Edgeworth box here with outputs. And the marginal rate of substitution came to us from this Edgeworth box where we were looking at individuals, person I and person J, that they're going to be able to trade with each other in a Pareto improving way to get to that efficient solution. So we've got trade underlying our ultimate outcome of an optimal solution for society, both on the consumption side and the production side. So I want to give you the theorems that come out, and then we'll close out this section after we get that down.
Is that line like a given line?
We know that it exists, but so that's why I kind of draw a squiggly in here. We don't know how those preference maps change. Like this guy's utility curve could become more flatter as it comes down, but we know that football region will end up getting traded away such that at least one person's better off without making somebody else worse off. So this is a collection, this contract curve was a collection of equilibrium points where there's indifference curves tangent all along it. With this one, there was isoquants where we're continually shifting around the scarce resources, our buckets of resources, we're continually shifting them around, finding the Pareto optimal solution for them. So the first welfare theorem. states this: perfectly competitive markets, in general equilibrium distribute resources in a Pareto efficient way. Perfectly competitive markets distribute resources in a Pareto efficient way. So this is kind of a big deal on why we like competition. If we go back to principles class and the big problem of how do we work with resources, scarce resources, and get the stuff that we want, and how do we do it in the best way possible, this illustrates that we can do it on our own as long as there's healthy competition. This is, of course, a little bit of a strong assumption, right? We know that markets aren't perfectly competitive always. So there's certainly assumptions built into this, and that's what we'll get into in the next material when we talk about asymmetric information and the chapter that we're going to, that we talked about in principles class, but not here directly, is externalities and public goods. Those sorts of things cause markets to not distribute resources to their highest and best use. Okay, so second welfare theorem. So the second welfare theorem. Any given Pareto efficient allocation in a perfectly competitive market is a general equilibrium outcome for some initial allocation. Now that one's kind of a mouthful. We're going to kind of step back and look at both of these. All of this really talks about efficiency. What's the other thing that we're kind of glossing over? What's the other key element that ends up driving a lot of policy in the United States and everywhere at a local level or at a large level that goes outside of what's efficient?
Improving?
What's that?
Improving?
How? So if something's efficient, so let me pick on one of these here.
Make people equal.
What's that?
Let's make people equal.
Yeah, that might be one way to correct the situation, but what's driving that? So what's our alternative if we can't make people equal? What's our attempt to do?
Not get anyone else worse off.
Yeah, possibly. I want to look at, tell me the implications of this efficient solution. Let's call it point A here. What's going on at point A? This is this is Michael, and this is Chelsea. This point is
Really
efficient
bad.
for society.
So
Chelsea has hardly anything, and Michael's got everything.
I love it.
Michael's Bill Gates or something, and Chelsea's over here.
Life sucks.
But it's efficient, so what is it not in the eyes of some people? It might be an efficient solution for society, but it's not fair. What's the E word that we use for fair? Equal or equity. So efficiency versus equity, which is all getting into the fairness realm of the world. That's not inside this. And economists recognize that. So the comeback to that is really the second welfare theorem. What the second welfare theorem says is that we can get back to being efficient if equity is an issue. We can redistribute wealth and we'll get back to being efficient, which is an important result. In other words, the person on the outside, whether it's the government or other people, maybe mom and dad deciding how, so we don't have to perfectly figure out the efficient solution for society. If I want to make things more equal between Chelsea and Michael, I don't have to figure out how I get to point B. You can see that would be pretty darn tough potentially. I'd have to really know Chelsea and really know Michael well, and maybe I could, through some omnipotent action from God, helpfully get to the efficient solution. What's beautiful about the second welfare theorem is we don't have to. If I take away some of Michael's cats and I give them to Chelsea and I plop to point C, I've redistributed the outputs in society, the goods, and now through an environment of free trade between the two, they'll figure it out on their own. And so let's, I don't know if I need to do that or not. Let's just do it this way. A football region would be created. They would trade mutually and get back to the contract curve. And if that result ended up not being right, then maybe we give Chelsea a few more cats and take them away from Michael, right? And so we can continue to redistribute goods, and knowing that we'll get back to the efficient solution.
This is starting to sound like the show where cat
Taking away his cat. Michael's got 30 cats locked up in his house. And then we start to get into the externalities because Michael's neighbor can smell the cat feces coming across the fence. And now we're getting into the negative externality realm. So there could be additional market failures. All right, so let me add that as the key to the second welfare theorem, because that's where we get the notion of equity injected. Something that I've talked about earlier. Most economists have steered clear of equity issues. Well, that's for the politicians to decide. That's not something within, maybe the realm of economics, other than economists saying that we'll end up getting back to something efficient, something that I think we can step to the plate and provide more information on. So the key is, if equity, let's put parentheses, fairness, if equity is an issue, a redistribution with free trade will get society back to the contract curve, back to the efficient level on the contract curve. Now the same is true in the resource market. So if we think that it's not fair that Microsoft somehow, Google got everybody to work for them, we can restrict Google to only having 100 employees instead of 200 employees, and take them away from Google, give them to somebody else, and that's kind of far-fetched, but that's the idea. We can have the same concept going on in the resource market. Okay, questions or comments on that? All right, so that's a pretty good segue into chapter 15. So chapter 15, we start to look at asymmetric information. And we start to pick apart why markets fail. And I want to start by listing reasons why markets fail. So, because we're coming right off the first welfare theorem, so we could even start this off with a big but. I like these buts here. I like big butts, and I don't know why. So, but markets sometimes fail. And let's just say fail to provide the efficient solution to society's problems. And the classic reasons why that you also saw in principles class was one, a lack of information, but now we're going to use a little more fancier term, asymmetric information, which is the topic of chapter 15. So asymmetric, there's a couple M's in here. Let's see if I missed an M. Asymmetric information, a situation in which there is an imbalance of information across participants in an economic transaction. An imbalance of information. We didn't really make a big stink of it before, but implicit in perfect competition is both parties having equal information on the decision. And so this is where we've gotten into food labeling, food labels required by government. So people with peanut allergies don't have to worry about whether the products they're buying have peanut traces in them or not, calories, all the health information, equals the playing field between the buyer and the seller in that case. All right. Now number 2 and 3, we're going to come back and spend time on asymmetric information, but I wanted to throw that out first. Number 2 is externalities. Number 2 is externalities. So externalities was a positive or negative impact to a third party not directly related to the transaction. So something we talked about before where we might have some pollution that's not being accounted for. On the consumption side, we might have something like secondhand smoke. We might have a garden in the front, a flower garden, nice landscaping in the front yard, which helps the neighbor's property value. That was a positive externality. Education, there might be benefits that go beyond the reasons you're attending Ottawa University. Society might be benefiting. There might be some other people that end up getting positive impact from you getting an education. You're less likely to go out and steal and cause problems in society. So all of those were externalities. Number 3 are public goods.
Positive externalities relate to market value.
Yes. Failure in the sense that society doesn't get the most efficient solution. So in our education example that we went through in the past, if we look at the marginal cost and marginal benefit of education, if we're just letting Brenson decide how much he is or how many students are going to go pursue education, that would be this quantity, where the benefits to you are equal to the cost of the education, right? So you're going to optimally choose some level of education. But the benefits to society are greater than that. And so the social benefit, the marginal social benefit's out here. And so we'd rather have more people educated than less. The market provides Q star. The allocatively efficient solution for society is something higher. So the market fails to produce QAE because of the positive externality. Same thing with pollution. That good is going to be overproduced relative because not all of the cost of the good are being captured. I don't want to spend too much time because we're not going to have this for the next test. But I do want to give you an overall flyby on reasons why markets fail. Public goods. These are goods that are non-rival and non-excludable. And so examples we used were national defense is always the classic one. Markets tend to provide national defense. If we asked everybody to voluntarily give money to help protect the country, then we have a free rider problem potentially on people not paying what they really are, what it's really worth to them. It might be hard for people to evaluate what it's worth to them until we have some of these terrorist attacks, right? We don't really understand the true value. It might be hard to discern that, and so therefore hard to put a price tag on, etc. Okay, so those are the areas that really economists probably spend the most time on, quite frankly. It's always situations where markets aren't performing very well, and then we start to ask, why? Why are they not performing well? Is it due to the institutions in place? In some cases, the well-intended policies that get formed have unintended consequences. And so in some cases, it's because we didn't allow the market to work itself out, i.e. bailout of bank bailouts and GM bailout and stuff like that. Government didn't allow the market system to work. And so public choice theory works on situations of bringing back market behavior. Other cases, we might look to figure out how agents on their own can solve problems of pollution. And so maybe there's a market for polluting, and through some cleverness, maybe we don't have to just outlaw it. Maybe we can allow it in some cases. And so we get into really interesting details on how we can still maybe use the market mechanism, but just in a different way. It's not, it's kind of a controlled market environment. Okay, so asymmetric information. We're going to start off with a little problem here. How many of you have purchased something on eBay or garage sale or some secondhand item. Hopefully everybody has, right? So this problem goes over a laptop sale. So imagine you're looking for a laptop and you don't have the funds maybe to go run to Best Buy and get the latest, greatest. And so you're shopping around. So suppose that consumers value a high quality used laptop computer at a price of $400, a low quality one at $100. The supply of high quality laptops is that. The supply of low quality laptops is something different. Potential buyers cannot tell the difference between a high quality and low quality laptop when purchasing one, right? You guys have seen that. I don't know if you've got a few laptops left over in the laptop junkyard, but looking at them, they're like, oh, well, there's a laptop. We could use it. You open it up and it don't work. It's got bug, whatever the situation is. So they can look good on the outside, but you don't always know what you're getting on the inside. So part A, assume that buyers believe there's a 50% probability that a used laptop will be of high quality. What would be the price that buyers are willing to pay for any laptop? So we got 400 is the value we would place if we knew it was a high quality laptop. 100 if it's low. But we can't tell. How would you form a price? Possibly we could. We don't have enough information to get there. Once you do solve for it, you're going to get a couple curves that would tell you where you want to buy it. Probability times the prices. Why? Well, it's a good guess. I mean, that would be one approach to it. Which is the 50% approach. You're right. Right. Well, let's work through it. So I guess, John, why don't, in fact, it's okay to, Michael, what'd you get on the high quality? I think I like to kind of map that out too.
Oh, for the inverse demand?
Yeah.
Oh, high quality would just be price of high is equal to quantity plus 100.
Okay. So something like that, right? So the supply of high quality laptops,
yeah,
vertical intercept of 100, and we are willing to pay 400. So let's just assume that the demand curve is perfectly elastic at 400. This would be the optimal quantity that would be sold. On the low side, what do we end up getting at 25 here? I didn't work this out on this thing, but doesn't it turn out to be 25? And maybe something that looks like this. I think it is helpful to think about there being a real market. I mean, people would buy the old laptop, but they know what they're getting when they're getting into it, that there's going to be some hiccups and they might have to buy this or that or get it fixed or whatever. So if there was full information, we'd have that many lows and that many highs being sold. So this would be solution Q star H and Q star low occur with full information, which brings us to our problem. We don't know what we're getting. Buyers believe we got a 50-50 shot, is what we got. So if you believe, for whatever reason, a 50-50 shot, of high, what is the most you'll pay?
Don't we have the full information though?
We don't.
Because if you just set it equal to 400 equal to the equation, what that equal to?
And that's what we've been doing all semester long. So now we're turning on you. We're saying we can't figure out which one's high and which one's low. They look the same, and we don't know. What we believe is that I've got a 50-50 shot. I know I'm buying a used good. You guys have played this game before, right? You're like, I know I'm buying a used good, but I don't know if I'm going to get a high or a low.
Thing is, though, buyers may believe that they're going to get a 50% shot, but that doesn't even matter on supply because
That's right.
they don't actually get 50-50, but
So let's go back to the efficient way to kind of figure out what we as a buyer, and maybe you guys have been in this situation, you have to hedge your bet, right? You see what I'm saying? You're going into the market wanting to get a used laptop. If you knew for sure you were getting a high one, you'd pay $400, but you don't know that. And you believe you've got a 50-50 shot of either getting a high or low. How are you going to hedge your bet? What's the price that you're willing to pay? So John, what were you suggesting?
you take 50% times 400, and then you add it to 50% times 100 to get your maximum pricing.
Okay, good. So we're finding the expected price, right? The expected value of the laptop to you, if you believe in this 50-50 shot. So the expected value with uncertainty is equal to that. 50% of 400 is 200, 50% of 100 is 50. We add them together. You're thinking, hey, if I can find one for 250 bucks, then I've at least got a shot. And maybe you have, you can tell different stories into this. We're just working with kind of a simplistic model at the end of the day. But there's some number that you're going to determine that's less. It's certainly not 400 is the main point we're getting at. But this is how, if this number is a good number, this is the most efficient way to calculate it. We saw this with mixed strategy equilibriums in game theory. Same concept. If you face a situation where you're not sure, then there is an optimal way to play the game if you don't know what the other player is going to do with certainty. Okay, so now let's go back to how the suppliers behave with that. So let's turn to part B. So if the price in A is offered in the market for used laptops, how many high quality laptops will be made available by the suppliers in the market? How many low quality laptops? Are buyers correct in their assumption that 50% of the used laptops available for sale are of high quality? So now, part B. We've got high quality laptops at price minus 100. So how many are high quality owners going to bring to the table, knowing that they look on eBay, oh, everything seems to be selling for $250. Should I sell mine? Should I not sell mine? Right? That's their decision. How many are they going to bring up on eBay? 150. So they're going to get 150 put on the market. Question? So again, what they're...
I thought you were going to put 150 minus 100%.
150 is because we're plugging in the expected value. So this is the price people are willing to pay, and it's something lower than 400. So the high quality, another flip way to just kind of think of your reasoning, the high quality owner of the laptop's thinking, oh, well, if I could get 400, I'd sell it, right, or whatever, or the more would be sold. There's a supply curve here. More will be brought to the market at higher prices. So because of buyers' uncertainty that they have, the market price is about 250. The going rate for a used laptop when they start checking into things is only 250. So therefore, the high quality there's going to be about 150 high quality laptops brought to the market. How many low quality laptops? We got 2PL, 450 minus 50 equals, again, 2 times, I'll write it in this time, 2 times 250 minus 50 equals 450. And I guess if you want to jot something down, the key thing here is that PL equals PH equals P star. And this is the price given the asymmetric information. Which equals 250. So that's what's driving this result, is the uncertainty doesn't allow there to be two markets. This is what it would be in an ideal situation, but given the nature of the market, of buyers not being able to tell high quality and low quality, we get this result. Now, so what is back to the heart of the question here, are buyers correct in their assumption of the 50-50 shot? No. Right? So, no. If we look at this ratio, we've got 150 to 450. So, the probability of a high quality is equal to the 150 made available divided by the 600 total, giving you what percent shot? 25% shot. Now,
Well,
parts, go ahead.
That's after the assumption, right? That they figured out.
So it's kind of a little bit of trial and error maybe going on.
So there's no way to figure it out before.
Nope. So you kind of go with your hunch. Well, maybe, you know how people kind of do that. That's not too unreasonable. I got a 50-50 shot of getting it. And of course, a lot of people aren't doing this math. So the argument that people come back to is, does this predict, even though not everybody's pulling out their calculators and doing this equation, does this thought capture the actual behavior? Some people are saying, well, I'd only pay 50 bucks because of the situation. Well, I'd pay 300, I'll take care of it. You know, so it's kind of, does this express the average behavior or not? Which is a question mark, a true question mark. But this would be the rational way of doing it if you were able to determine these, or you're just in the face of uncertainty. So as you play the market, and so this gets into part C, what would you expect to happen over time as information about the true odds of buying a high quality used laptop becomes known? So it's almost like a sequential game type framework, right? We're starting to learn now as we move through time. Yeah, it's going to keep going down. It's going to get worse, right? Because now imagine if we go back to this exercise and we plug in, I've got a 25% chance of getting this, a 75% chance of getting this. Now my expected price is even much lower. And so it ends up moving further away from where we'd like to be. So economists like to think about the long run as well as the short run. This might be the short run, but in the long run, the market's going to continue to move further away from where we'd like to be. This plus this. So the quantity in the market quantity, was 150 of high quality plus 450 of low. Gives me 600. Any other questions? Okay, turn your page over. So, Anastasia and Catherine own a cafe. Because their equipment and business, they run the risk of loss due to small kitchen fires. This risk can be mitigated by taking precautions such as purchasing fire extinguishers or by increasing the training and awareness of the cafe's employees. Assume that the marginal cost of these precautions can be represented by that equation where A is equal to the actions taken to mitigate the risk of fire. Likewise, the marginal benefit of these precautions is 100 minus 2A. So let's graph this out. Now this is getting a little thick now. We got A, the amount of actions we take to mitigate our risk of fire. What do we know from, oh gosh, the early chapters in principles class about the marginal benefit of additional fire extinguishers? The first fire extinguisher versus the second versus the third in my small cafe versus the fourth versus the fifth, it's diminishing. The benefit of each additional fire extinguisher falls. The benefit of each additional smoke detector falls as I put them 5 feet from each other, 3 feet. We could cover the whole doggone ceiling with smoke detectors, right? And pretty soon, the benefit of those additional ones is zero. It'll drive it to zero. So that's what's going on here with the marginal benefit of taking precautions is captured in this variable A. So what does this look like? So we got marginal benefit equals 100. So we got kind of dollars over here. And here we've got the level of precautions, the benefit of taking precautions. So we got a marginal benefit curve of 100 minus 2A. Capturing what we just said. The marginal effect of more and more precautions falls. In this case, we've got, and I guess I'm going to do a little squiggly here because I got, maybe I'll do it a little higher. We've got an intercept of 80 plus 8A. So we got the marginal cost of precautions looking like that. So a slightly increasing cost. Of course, if we were talking about fire extinguishers, it'd probably be constant, right? If we can keep buying fire extinguishers at a price of $40 a fire extinguisher or whatever. But we're talking in general precautions, so it might be more and more costly to take additional precautions. And so, what is A star? First person with an answer, 2. So a level of 2 is our number. All right, so suppose the cafe has insurance now. now we have some fire insurance that reduces the marginal benefit of taking precautions to MB equals 90 minus 4A. Now let's reason that out in our heads. Does that make sense that this thing would shift to 90 and then minus 4A, so even we got a little change in the slope of some sort. So this is with insurance. Does that make sense? We got to really, I want you to always think about the logic here. So I don't have as much benefit to taking the same precautions I did before. I might have been really, really careful because I didn't have insurance, but now that I got insurance, maybe I can back off on the 4th, 5th fire extinguisher and only have 3 or whatever, right? So I'm changing my behavior because of the insurance. And so what is the new level then? Let's call it A2 if this was A1. 0.83. Oh, you guys snuck in an extra credit point. I keep forgetting for this class.
Yes, and except for the one I lost.
So A2 is 0.83. Okay. So this is what we call moral hazard. Changing your actions because of what's in place is moral hazard. I'll define it next time on Monday. Over here, adverse selection. All right. We will pick up there on